The sound of raindrops against the window pulled me from restless sleep. Moving to this isolated house in the woods was supposed to be a fresh start, but something about it felt wrong. It wasn't just the creaking floorboards or the occasional flicker of the old light bulbs. It was the silence. Too complete. Too heavy. I found the journal on the second day. Buried beneath a loose floorboard in the attic, its leather cover was cracked, the pages yellowed with time. It wasn't mine. The entries started innocuously enough. Small notes about weather, mundane tasks, the kind of trivialities that fill the days of someone living alone. But as I read on, the tone shifted. The author, who signed only as M, began describing odd occurrences. A shadowy figure watching from the tree line. Footsteps echoing in empty rooms. Items disappearing and reappearing in strange places. It was unsettling, but I brushed it off as the ramblings of someone lonely and paranoid. That night, I heard footsteps in the hallway. At first, I convinced myself it was the house settling or my mind playing tricks on me. But the sound was deliberate, measured, and distinct. I stayed in bed, heart pounding until dawn. In the light of day, I searched every corner of the house, but found no sign of intruders. I told myself it was nothing. I was wrong. The entries in the journal began to mirror my experiences. M described waking up to find dirt on the floor, as if someone had walked in from outside. The same thing happened to me the next morning. Then there were scratches on the walls, faint but undeniable. M claimed to hear whispers at night, a language they couldn't understand. I heard them too. I started sleeping with the lights on. It didn't help. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. The journal's entries became frantic, the handwriting erratic. M wrote about seeing a figure standing at the foot of their bed, watching them sleep. I couldn't bring myself to read more that night. One day, while exploring the woods behind the house, I found a clearing. At its center was a circle of stones, blackened as if by fire. Surrounding it were crude carvings on the trees, symbols I didn't recognize. The air felt colder there, heavier. I left quickly, but the sense of being watched lingered. Back at the house, I decided to research the property's history. What I found sent chills down my spine. Several owners over the decades had either vanished or met untimely ends. The most recent occupant before me, a woman in her 30s, had disappeared without a trace. Her name? Margaret, the same initial as the journal's author. That night, I woke to the sound of the front door slamming. Grabbing a flashlight, I crept downstairs. The door was wide open, the freezing night air pouring in. Outside, in the dirt, were footprints leading away from the house. They weren't mine. I followed them. They led to the clearing. The stone circle was glowing faintly, the symbols on the trees pulsating with an eerie light. In the center of the circle stood a figure. They turned slowly, and I froze. It was Margaret, or at least it looked like her. But her eyes were empty, black voids, and her mouth twisted into a smile that didn't belong to any living thing. She spoke, but the words weren't hers. They were guttural, otherworldly, and they echoed in my head long after her lips stopped moving. Then she vanished. The light from the stones faded, and I was alone in the suffocating darkness. I ran back to the house, but it wasn't the same. The walls seemed closer, the air thicker. The journal lay open on the kitchen table, though I hadn't left it there. The final entry wasn't written in Margaret's hand. It was mine. The words were a warning, but I couldn't make sense of them. It felt like they were written in a moment of frantic desperation, a plea to anyone who might find them. Or perhaps to myself. The only clear phrase was the last. It's already too late. Now, I can't tell what's real anymore. The whispers are constant, louder than ever. The figure appears in every reflective surface, closer each time. The journal is gone. I woke up one morning, and it had vanished. But last night, I found a new entry in its place. On the wall, carved deep into the wood, in handwriting unmistakably mine. Don't look behind you. And now, I hear the footsteps again. The footsteps stopped just outside my bedroom door. My heart raced as I stared at the handle, waiting for it to turn. But it didn't. Instead, I heard faint breathing, slow, deliberate, and too close for comfort. I stayed frozen, clutching the flashlight I kept beside my bed like it was a lifeline. After what felt like an eternity, the sound stopped. I waited, not daring to move, until the first light of dawn crept through the window. When I finally mustered the courage to open the door, the hallway was empty, but something was different. The walls were covered in scratches, long and jagged, as if made by claws. I wanted to leave, to run as far away as possible, but something kept me tethered to the house. It wasn't just fear, it was curiosity. I needed to know what was happening. Who or what was haunting me, and why? Over the next few days, I delved deeper into the house's history. I found old newspaper clippings hidden in a dusty box in the attic. Most of the articles were about Margaret's disappearance, but one, much older, caught my attention. It detailed the trial of a man named Elias Grayson, who had been accused of witchcraft and executed in the late 1800s. The location of his so-called rituals? My property. The article mentioned that Elias had sworn vengeance before his death, vowing that anyone who lived on his land would never find peace. It also described a strange artifact, a small, black stone engraved with runes, that Elias had supposedly used in his rituals. The stone was never found. That night, I dreamed of the clearing. In the dream, I was standing in the circle of stones, the black stone clutched in my hand. The symbols on the trees glowed brighter and brighter, until everything was consumed by light. When I woke, I felt an unbearable weight in my chest, as if something was pressing down on me. I checked the clearing again the next morning. This time, the stone was there, sitting in the center of the circle. It was smaller than I had imagined, fitting easily in the palm of my hand. As soon as I touched it, a jolt of cold shot through my body, and I heard a whisper, not from outside, but inside my head. "You can't run now." I threw the stone as far as I could and ran back to the house, but the damage was already done. That night, the whispers turned into screams. My reflection in the mirror moved when I didn't. Shadows slithered across the walls, forming shapes that looked almost human. And the journal reappeared, lying open on my desk. The page was blank except for one phrase. "Finish what you started." I don't know what it meant, but the house began to feel alive. Doors opened and closed on their own. The air was thick with the scent of burning wood. I started seeing Margaret everywhere, in the woods, in the windows, even in my dreams. But it wasn't her. It was something wearing her face. Last night, I found myself back in the clearing, though I don't remember walking there. The stone was in my pocket. The whispers became a roar, and the ground beneath me trembled. The symbols on the trees bled a dark, viscous liquid, and the air was filled with the sound of distant laughter. I don't know how I got back to the house. All I know is that something followed me. I can feel it watching me now, its presence heavy and suffocating. I've barricaded myself in the bedroom, but I know it's only a matter of time. The journal is here with me, though I don't remember bringing it. The pages are filled with writing now, but it's not mine. The words are in a language I don't understand, except for one sentence that repeats over and over. "You were chosen." The footsteps are back. They've reached the door. And this time, the handle is turning. The door swung open, but no one was there. The hallway beyond was impossibly dark, as if the light from my room couldn't penetrate it. My breath caught in my throat. The journal lay open on the floor, pages flipping wildly as though caught in a storm, though the air was still. Then I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, a figure emerged from the shadows. It wasn't Margaret. It wasn't anyone I recognized. Its shape was human but distorted, limbs too long, head slightly tilted as if it were studying me. Its eyes were hollow, endless black voids that seemed to pull the light from the room. It stepped closer, slowly, deliberately. I backed away until I was pressed against the wall. The whispers in my head grew deafening, a cacophony of voices screaming, laughing, and crying all at once. The journal flew from the floor, landing in my hands, its pages glowing faintly in the dark. The figure stopped just inches away, its head lowering to meet my gaze. Its mouth didn't move, but I heard its voice clearly. "Write." My hands moved on their own, clutching the pen that had somehow appeared in my grip. I began to write in the journal, though I didn't understand the words. They poured from me, a language I'd never known, my hand moving faster and faster. The whispers faded, replaced by a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through my chest. The figure stepped back, nodding slowly. The darkness of the hallway seemed to fold in on itself, swallowing it whole. And then it was gone. The journal slammed shut, the glow fading instantly. I sat there, trembling, the silence almost unbearable after the chaos. When I finally found the courage to open the book again, the pages were blank. Every word I had written was gone. But something had changed. The house was quiet, peaceful even. The oppressive air had lifted, and for the first time since I'd moved in, I felt like I could breathe. I thought, for a brief, hopeful moment, that it was over, until I noticed the small black stone sitting on my desk. It wasn't where I'd left it in the clearing. And this time, it had new carvings, symbols I recognized. Symbols I'd written in the journal. I picked it up, the cold biting into my skin. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement in the mirror. Not a reflection, but something behind me. When I turned, the room was empty. But in the mirror, my reflection didn't move. It stood there, staring at me, its hollow eyes filled with a darkness I now recognized. And then it smiled.